Hello, Not So Sexy fans. This is your host, Alexander. And I got to say, it is great to be doing this again, to be back after a very, very, very long hiatus, to be starting the new season, season 4 of Not So Sexy, with a very special guest, Amy Taylor. She is a high-end sex worker, and she gets into it. She breaks it down for us, what it's like to be a professional of this caliber. And yeah, I'm going to say it, they're professionals. She breaks down what sex workers have to think about, how they stay protective. She talks to us about what she would do if she was king for a day in terms of making laws that improve sex workers' lives. And she gets into the fact that, men can be real fucking idiots and mean and rude. And she talks about falling in love and being in love and how being a sex worker affects her love life. It's an incredible episode. Big thank you to Amy for doing this for us. I'm sure we'll have her on again for other conversations. Let's get started.
I'm ready to talk about all of it.
Let's explore.
Serving you.
I accept you.
I was coming.
There's not a good space for me. Talk about sex.
Are we ready?
I think we're ready.
Fair enough. Let's officially talk then. How should I call your profession? Like, what's the respectable, how would you like me to refer to what you do?
I don't know that I'm that respectable. Being totally respectable seems pretty overrated.
Yeah, whatever you want me to call it.
But so a lot of people in my profession like to call it sex work. And that is because they want it to be acknowledged as real work that's deserving of rights and not getting murdered and thrown in a ditch, which is true. Everyone deserves rights. We've always been a part of the economy. And guess what? We always will be.
Oldest profession.
Look, I mean, make it make sense. Men didn't want women to have their own money, but then they get mad when we need their money to survive. I don't know why. People just want to be angry at somebody, and so they pick us a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Fine.
Who knows why the pussy is so easy to be mad at? I don't really know, but say la.
Well, and the oddest thing is that there's very little sex, at least in my version of sex work. Many people have no interest in having sex with me when they hire me. I usually don't, and the ones I did, I chose to because I wanted to. Nobody ever said, giving you money, so we're going to have sex. Well, actually, one person did, but he was a cop, and then I learned about that. That day sucked. But nobody talks like that, and nobody, at least at the sort of high end where I live, nobody treats other people like that. So I would be shocked and leave if somebody acted that vulgar because I'm a human and so are they, and there's respect on both sides. I tend to treat people with respect until they give me a reason not to, and so do my clients. So sex work is a fine term. It acknowledges that we work and pay taxes and deserve rights that we don't have yet in my country. But I don't know that sex is the main thing I'm selling. I tend to be a girlfriend for a few years to men that have a lot of extra money and don't mind at all providing for a woman. They always have with any woman they've dated because that's what they have to share. They have extra. And a lot of other people don't. So they don't get mad at it. And I've tripped around in the world of the wealthy. I myself am not rich, but I serve them. And in that world, it is utterly normal for women to not work and have their schedules open and available so they can travel with their man or woman, whoever they're with, because one person tends to have such a huge career and life that they're very busy. And if the other person had 2 part-time jobs at minimum wage, first of all, they'd never see each other. Secondly, the money the other person contributed would be a drop in the pond and not necessary. So at least in the world of the very wealthy, it's pretty normal for a woman to have her bills provided for, if they're not married. And so nobody cares. It's normal. The people who think it's financially yucky, I guess they want a 50-50 thing, and that's totally cool. Great, go do that. But I was raised pretty traditionally. My mother didn't make almost any money, worked part-time at times, other times didn't. My father paid all the bills. It's what I saw. Worked out great for our family. And I'm pretty attracted to powerful men. Their lives are fascinating and sexy. And so even before I did this, I had a boyfriend who was 10 years older and was wealthy while I was in college and paid for everything. Because otherwise I never would have seen him, right?
So you've said a lot, and I think it's really fascinating because, let me just give you the perspective I have as I'm listening to you, because I think a lot of people the vast majority of people are not fabulously wealthy like you're describing. And so, but you have this really, really interesting perspective into the world of sex work and into the world of like what you're alluding to, which is this like powerful men, wealth. And I think it's interesting because there's a couple of ironic things that I think are really funny. You were raised in a traditional background and you do this very non-traditional job. And I find that fascinating. And I think that's really interesting. I also think the thing about powerful men providing for women, and you said you acted as a girlfriend. So, okay, let me just take a step back. So when you say you act as a girlfriend, are you in love with these men, or are you under the impression like I provide some kind of service? You know, there is some kind of like general, like we're amicable, maybe we have sex, maybe we don't. But like when you say girlfriend, that term and that word really, like, I'm curious what you mean.
So I have felt love for a few, others definitely not. I do feel that I want to make their lives better. So I do feel sometimes a little servile, not in a weak sense, but they provide for me so that I can survive. They provide for my safety. I mean, this is a country where if you can't pay your bills, you end up homeless. Healthcare isn't free. Nothing's free here. So I do feel that I want to provide something in return for what they do for me. And I believe relationships are a place you go to give, not to take, and you give what you have to give. When you are younger and poor, you don't typically have money to give. When you're older and richer, sometimes you do. So love, yes, I have felt that a couple times. Breakups have been painful a couple times. And yet, yes, they still provided for me financially. These are men who provide for anybody they date, whether they met them as an escort with a website or not. And they do kind of do both at various points in their lives. And then act as a girlfriend. I don't think it's always acting, but sometimes it is a person that I would not date if they were not paying me. That is often true. More commonly, if they weren't paying me, I would simply have to find money elsewhere. I would have to get a different job, and then we'd have schedule issues, as I said before. In terms of physical attraction, some have been very good looking. Many have not. And that does not bother me. I've never chosen the sort of hot guy. I've slept with a couple. It's fun. They look great. But I'm really attracted to one thing: how a man treats me. That's it. That's all I care about. How does he treat me? Period. So I'm well suited for this work because men who come to the high-end escort world derive real pleasure from making a woman's life really fun and fabulous. They plan great trips. They do cool stuff. They're fun to be with, and they're fucking fascinating to have like dinner with because they're usually brilliant. So I find it, I would date these kind of men anyway, even if I didn't do this. There's no acting. There's no separation between that's probably unhealthy, but for me, it's a lifestyle and one that just happens to allow me to pay for food and shelter.
Totally fair. I think that, we all need like a place to live and to eat. I have a good friend that's like, yeah, man, you gotta eat.
Yeah, that's life. Nothing's free. I hate it. I missed childhood when I didn't know about bills, but this is life.
So I know this is probably going to be a very like obvious question, but just walk me through the basics.
So it's been honed over making all the mistakes, gotten better at it. So it's pretty streamlined now. I do everything through my website. When they submit the reservation form, I begin all kinds of background checking. Some of it's tech-based. Google's my friend. Some of it is low tech. I do require them to speak to me by phone at their discretion and convenience, very briefly, because you can also tell a lot by a person's voice. But that's not enough, of course. They are fully background checked. I pay for that. They required to give references. I don't meet anybody who can't at least provide one positive reference from another well-known companion. So that makes a lot of people mad if they've never met somebody, but that's really not my problem. My life's worth more than their money.
And when you say reference, you mean that they have to have experience with another sex worker?
And it has to be somebody who's a little bit established, because what they often try to do is like place a fake ad and say that it's somebody. That doesn't work for me. And
fair enough.
And the reason that helps me is not so much because, chemistry is chemistry. What I found is some of my favorites other people didn't like, and some of their favorites I didn't like. So it's not going to tell me that he's like somebody I'm going to adore, but it is going to tell me whether or not he's a murderer, right?
Yeah, you're getting the big highlights Like, how many knives do you own?
Well, I do check out like a history of violent crime. He's never going to meet me. A history of drug use. He's never going to meet me. It doesn't mean he has to have a perfectly 100% clear background. I've had wonderful relationships of years with people who do have a record, and that's complicated. But if they've changed and they're not going to harm me, that's not necessarily a deal breaker. It depends what they did and when and, the whole story. But I have access to, I can get all the records and read everything if I really want to. And I have a couple times. So I don't expect somebody to be perfect, but I do want to get a general picture of, is my life safe with this person? And better if I really like them, but certainly what I care about is returning home to my dog alive. And there is no amount of money or no fun plan that's going to make me compromise on that. They are also required to pay a deposit. That makes a lot of men mad. My answer to them is I didn't set up $1 million website for 2 decades to get your measly $1,000.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, but that some of them think I'm a scam is odd. I have a huge internet footprint, so it's pretty clear that I'm not. But I understand that they do get scammed. I blame them for not doing adequate research. When you make a large purchase online, you should do research. They get a Big Mac attack to meet a hot chick, and they're just lazy. Those people are not people I want to meet. The smart ones are very careful in who they choose, and so they tend to have better experiences because they're just treating this with, they're smarter at this. And I can't fix the ones who aren't. And deposit, the reason it's not about their money, although it does create leverage and prevents flakiness, which helps me pay my bills. But what it also does is creates a paper trail in case I don't return home. It's very easy to figure out who I was with and where I was. And so that's vital for me, and anybody who won't do that cannot meet me. Once they've done those things and we've chatted and we're excited to have our fun plans, whatever they might be, that's anything from just a few hours with cocktails and getting to know each other to going to the Seychelles for 2 weeks. Don't tend to do that first date because you don't know each other, but, I've been all kinds of dates with all kinds of people. And then, and everything's set, and we have our plans, and if we like each other, then we keep seeing each other, and if not, that's okay too.
What comes up a lot as you're talking about the process, and you've talked about these men, you bring up death and violence a lot, like thematically. And I think it's totally worth going into that because clearly it's something that matters to you. I mean, obviously, like, it's your life. But I think for somebody listening to the world that you work in, even like, I'm a little surprised because, the first thing you said is like, I'm working with powerful, wealthy men, and violence and men are never separated. This, like, obviously, maybe even more so with powerful, wealthy men, violence is even more on the forefront because they have the means to like not suffer the consequences. So I would love to just, like, when you think about your work and you think about your own safety, what would you want people to know about this work with respect to those things? Does that question make sense?
Yes, I understand. My experience has been that powerful, wealthy men do not engage in violence because they don't have to. They just delete you from their life and you do not exist anymore, which is punishment enough. You lose the connections. You may lose the income if you're somebody like me, and you lose a lot of glamour and fun. So if you misbehave to them, they just get you out of their life and move on. They have too much to lose to engage in stuff. The fantasy that some billionaire is actually murdering women on the side has not been my experience, and I've never heard of that. What my problem has been with the 1,000 to 1 men who contact me all day, every single day, who are not wealthy and not powerful and hate me because of the men that are seeing me. They're jealous of those men. I'm simply the middleman that they hate because they really hate the men. They're envious, right? Because those men do get any woman they want.
You're a proxy, basically, for their frustration.
It's envy. And hey, hell, I mean, I might be a little envious of my clients. Their lives are pretty spectacular. I'd love to be them too, but I'm not that smart and I'm not that powerful. But so my experience with violence and the ones who email me that they want to hurt me, and if they were to get through my screening, they would, have never been powerful, wealthy men. They've typically been men who hate women and view themselves as entitled to more and better women than they can get given their station in life, either because of their look or their money or both. They really hate others and wish their lives were more like the men who they perceive are getting whatever they want, which is not true. Powerful, wealthy men have to obey a lot of stuff too. They're stakeholders, they're shareholders, they have lots of constraints on their lives, but typically not financially. So my experience has been a need to avoid the kind of men who, and it's like I said, 1,000 to 1. They want badly to hurt me, to take revenge for some kind of inability to get access to all the women they wanted. And that we choose men who are, I'm sorry, better than them makes them angry and they want to hurt us for it. I know a guy who's really short. He says 9 out of 10 women won't date him because he's short. And he said once, I would stop wanting to hurt women if women would stop pissing me off. And that comment really scared me. Because FYI, It's not that he's short, it's his personality. No, I like short men just fine, and so do plenty of women. And by the way, you don't need all the women. You need one who really loves you. In my business, the blonde, skinny 28-year-olds definitely get more offers than somebody like me, short brunette, ever did. But you know what? I didn't need everybody. I needed a handful who liked me enough. Sometimes it was just one for a few years who saw me a lot. You just have to find one person who likes you. That's it, right?
Coming from a sex worker, you saying that is hilarious. It's like you just have to find someone who likes you. That's I think that is brilliant. I also
That's it.
You know what
There's this fantasy that we are people that you can do anything you want to, that no one loves us, no one cares about us. And sometimes at the low end, there's women who their families have given up on them, and they are a little bit easier of a victim, and that sucks and shouldn't be. But they perceive when you set up a website and hang your shingle out that you're somebody who's subhuman and can be treated any way people want. Of course, that's wrong, but that perception that we are garbage people who are subhuman is something I have to reckon with. So all of my screening is, the Poisson distribution in math, very rare but dire if it happens. Shark bite, lightning bolt, plane crash. Yeah. So I spend a lot of time preparing for something that is rare but totally dire if it happens to me.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's a cannot happen kind of failure. I totally follow.
It's the case in uncompensated dating as well. The most dangerous person to any woman's life is the man she loves. That's the thing that's most likely to kill you as a woman. And yet, insanely, women go out every night and date men. I mean, probably we shouldn't, right? To stay alive, but we like you guys, which is, we like sex and we like men. I do.
It's that Musk.
It's the thing that causes all the drama that we still do, because when it goes well, it's so great, right? What else are we here to do but enjoy life and love somebody and have some sex?
Yeah. What you're talking about is something that I think a lot of men struggle with, and maybe everybody, but I think women tend to have better social groups and better places to talk about this stuff. But it's the brutality of nature, which is like not all of us are born. Let's just speak about what our physical capabilities are. Not all of us are born into like the bodies of a professional athlete, right? And so that removes us from certain class of women as you're describing it. And I think even talking about not just physical, but we weren't born into the families, we weren't born into the opportunities, and all of those things add up to a 50-year-old guy who's like, I fucking I'm so mad at women.
It's fair, but most of us don't look like you, sir. I mean, I know what you look like, and they want to, because it would be easier if they did. You can't tell me it doesn't help you with women the way you look.
Well, let's just take a step back, because normally I don't keep this about me. It's funny you bring that up. I did not grow up the way I look as an adult, and so
Are you ugly?
So I was. I like here's why I do think, because I've met a few sex workers just through like friends of friends and obviously the podcast, and I appreciate the candor of how you say these things. Like, I think more candor, especially you've mentioned sort of the United States culture a few times, and I think especially as we sit in this country, like Americans don't do well with just calling out the thing. As a comedian, that's like why I think I have a job in the first place, is because so much of it is like buried, and so if I unbury it, I have a job. But so I want to touch on this for a second. So having grown up, as you say, ugly, which is the truth, and quite weird, which is as somebody in your position, is like the worst fucking combination to meet a woman.
No comment.
No, I want your commentary. I'm curious how you feel about this. I really want to get your POV on this is because you're talking about how there's a class of men who do not have, whatever it is to get the kind of woman they want. And that internalizes into hatred for women, right? If I'm interpreting and synthesizing, I think a lot of what you've been saying correctly.
Yes. Yes.
And from having sat in that position where these men exist, maybe on a longer term basis, I will say the thing that I came to a conclusion of is like, I have to build a person that a woman would want to date. Like, I can't, like, if I'm ugly, then okay, that's not the game I can play. I can play great personality. I can be really funny. I can be very charming. I can, I got a degree in science because I was like, women love math, which is, whatever. But my point to you is, you hearing me say this, I'm curious what your response is. And what you would say to these men that hate. Like, what would you tell them if you could give them some advice?
Well, you're exactly correct what you figured out. You're not the dumbest guy. Hate never got anybody anywhere except made them lonely and less attractive. And women, in biology, it's called a low power strategy. The one who doesn't have hegemony and power has to find other ways to survive. The smaller animal, and in our culture, because women didn't have access to power and wealth, we long ago, tens of thousands of years ago, learned to shuck and jive, so to speak. I think women do an hour and a half of makeup for ourselves. I mean, we sort of learned to enjoy the creativity of it, but long hair takes longer to dry. Having a small waist takes not eating all the carbs you want. I mean, we do all kinds of things to make ourselves more of what men want us to be. And so, yes, men should and do also. I had a client once tell me, he was a billionaire, and he said most men would be happy in a one-bedroom apartment, but we go and get all this stuff for you guys. And I said, well, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
And that same thing, muscles are attractive. It's very clear. You've seen it. When you become physically more appealing, women want you more. Again, you don't need every single woman. 4 billion would be too many for your schedule. But having more options is helpful. And being angry about it is sort of silly. You can't change it. Why would anybody not go for their best option when they date or marry or love or even have a one-night stand? They're going to go for their best option. And it takes some brutal some introspection to say, well, am I it? Now as a sex worker that's in my 40s, the men who want somebody who's 22 are uninterested in me. That's okay. There's plenty of others who like the more mature women, but you learn that don't worry about the ones who don't want you, but you're going to have to be desirable to someone. Like you said, that might be your personality. You probably want to be as physically attractive as you can for whatever genetics and age you have. You can add some artificial stuff like lifting weights or doing Botox, but you can only take it so far. And I would advise men who hate women that they're only ensuring their own loneliness, and they're not going to change women. They never will. So you can be mad at something, or you can just get on board and realize the way society has and always will work. Women don't owe an angry, terrible man their attention. Why would they?
I think what you just said might be one of the wiser things this podcast has come across, which is only ensuring your own loneliness. I think that's the truth.
That's no fun, right?
Yeah, I think I like you also said the word brutal, which we've used a couple of times, and I think that is I think that's what makes sex so hard, because it's such a fundamental aspect of being human, and it's like you said, it's such a need on both sides. Men and women want it, and then it comes down to okay, what's the brutal truth here? Like, what are the options that I have available to me? And a lot of men are told well, the world's your oyster, you can do anything, and at some point you have to have some deep introspection and recognize it's yo, I am not going to be able to have sex with that movie star, for many, many reasons, or whatever, right? Just using sort of a typical example.
Sure. Women too, we're all told we're little princesses, and life comes at you fast, and you realize you're not a princess. And I mean, I've been traded in for a new one by wealthy men and watched them rinse and repeat and have the same experiences and buy the same gifts for a new one. And I've realized I had a good time, and thank you for seeing me, but I'm not special. They're going to have the experiences they want, and I was just plugged in because I was there. I had one tell me once the reason he saw me so much is that I was available more than the one he saw before me because she had a kid and was busier than me. And that's good. It's humbling. Like, main character syndrome is wild right now. Like, we're all unique and yet we're all replaceable. The beauty of sex work is seeing everybody else's socials and websites. You become acutely aware that you are not special. And that's okay. It's humble. I don't know, it's sort of relieving to me that I don't matter that much. And then I also do to maybe my family and my dog, I guess.
Yeah, the circle. Yeah, well, you're speaking to a guy that like does stand up in Los Angeles. So knowing that I'm very, very easily replaceable is absolutely like very true.
And you're also valuable. You're making people laugh, which is what feels better than that. So rejection is good for us. And I know why parents tell their kids they can reach the stars, because low self-esteem certainly isn't helpful. That's like driving with your handbrake on. So if we all have too high of self-esteem, I suppose given the alternative, that's better. But it's important to keep it in check.
Here's the thing. We've talked a lot about men. We've talked about wealthy men. We've talked about angry men. We've talked about, ugly men. We've talked about me being ugly, which is all great. I would love to talk more about you because I think I get a sense of like kind of how you view the world to some extent, but I'd love to know more. So like why this profession? Why sex work? Because you mentioned you went to Berkeley, I think, and I get the sense of just chatting with you. You've got, you're intellectual, you have interests clearly, like, and I say that because I imagine a person who's interested in wealthy men, the way you've described it is like you like what they like, you're fascinated, right? So you have curiosity, and so you're not a bim. Like, there are types of people, right, especially in LA, and this is why I say this, my perspective is like people only care about the fucking Porsche and they only care about the pool, and I get the sense you're not that person. So I want to dive in. Why the profession? Give me a little background.
It's sort of agency versus organic is what the anthropologists say. And my life did not turn out the way I thought it would, for sure. But I'm making lemonade with what happened. So at UC Berkeley, 95 to 99, because I'm 1,000 years old, I studied molecular biology. I got out. I worked at a place in Marin County, a biotech lab, doing basic research. And I couldn't pay my bills, but I told you I had that boyfriend who was a decade older. He was a physician, paid all the bills, and then he wanted to marry me. I would have been 24 and immediately having kids and not working and living pretty close to my own parents. It would have been basically the perfect traditional life, but I didn't do it. I wanted to go to grad school. I wanted to make my own money. I wanted to live in a big city. So I applied to grad schools. I got in LA. And I think I always wanted to live in LA. I got into UCLA undergrad, but my parents didn't want me going there. That was far away, so that's why I went to Cal. But I always wanted to live in LA. I mean, who doesn't? Palm trees, pretty people, great weather. So I accepted admission to get to graduate school in LA, and then he and I, of course, didn't make it. Long distance is hard, and I think I wanted freedom. I didn't want to marry an older man, and I was staring down the barrel at my whole future being figured out, and I guess I just sort of indirectly torpedoed it. I had heard about escorting from a sorority sister of mine during undergrad. Didn't do it then because A, I had a rich boyfriend, and B, I don't know, too scared or whatever. But I remember thinking, wow, that's an option. And maybe my first impression of it was too good because she was very privileged, worked for this agency that was very ethical, and he told me it was great. If somebody had told me something different, I guess I would have had a different impression of what it was. So when I got to LA, grad school started. He and I didn't make it. He took back my car because he owned it. I was in a position of suddenly being lonely, not wanting to fall in love again, but wanting to date around casually, needing money to pay for grad school, needing a car. You can't live in LA without one. And I thought, I'll find an agency like that. There's got to be something in LA that'll hire me. And nobody would. I was... I'm a nice person and I was young, which is marketable, but I wasn't pretty enough. They hired like women who've had surgery and were far more glamorous. But one agency owner told me, she's like, you're really personable and guys are going to go nuts for the science-y grad student thing. They're going to love you. You don't need an agency. You can do this on your own. And I was like, well, I don't know how to do that. And she told me about a couple websites and I did a research for a week or two and, it ain't rocket science. I got through Cal without even trying. I'm not dumb. So you just need an email and a phone and a name and a couple pictures. And so I set all that up, and the first couple clients were wonderful. Both of them saw me for years. But I was very naive and trusting. And the third client was a cop. I got arrested. That sucked. But then I learned to screen because I realized people could lie and pretend they were something they weren't. So I guess the upside of having that happen was that the next liar, could have been a murderer or something.
Yeah.
I learned to screen. It's a tough lesson to learn not to trust people. I suppose that you learn that as you age, no matter what it is you do. But I was just young and trusting and naive. I didn't come from the streets. Where I came from, people didn't lie about their identities. So I didn't know that people would do that.
Yeah.
So I learned to screen, made some connections with other colleagues. People learned I was kind of the real deal, and then it was off to the races for years. I've retired a couple times for a few years here and there, but every time I tried to date, regularly, it didn't work out. These were as I said before, these are the kind of men I am attracted to anyway. So I sort of stayed in it, and that's how life went. It's super weird, but that's what happened.
Yeah, that I've got a couple of questions that come to mind, but I also think it's funny that you got arrested for you're like, what are you arresting me for? Like going on a fucking date? Like I that's hilarious. Not in the moment. I'm sure it didn't feel hilarious. It didn't feel good, but
I thought I met a nice guy. He was kind of good looking, older, my type. And so I was very excited to, we had a great time, and I was happy to make out if he wanted to, because I have needs. I'm human. I thought, and yes, of course, it'd be great if he'd help me with grad school bills and getting my car. And instead, I got thrown to the floor, a gun put to my head like I was some kind of really scary person, and SWAT team busting in like they had caught El Chapo. And I don't think, and then he tried to save me. He wanted me to date his rich brother, if that even was true. He might have still been acting. There might be no brother. What do I know? But obviously, I wasn't going to date his fucking brother. And then he offered me a job cleaning houses for some friend of his for minimum wage. That's rescue, right?
I that's what I hate is I think there's this thing where it's there is a concept of saving a sex worker, and you're like, I'm just pulling numbers out of my ass, but I make $1,000 in 20 minutes or an hour or whatever, and you want me to fucking clean toilets for $8 and then treat me like a piece of shit? You treat me worse than I get treated? No, fuck that. There's definitely a jealousy in men for sure, because it's oh, I wish I could do that, because it would be so, I mean, from the outside, right, when I say this, it would be so easy. And there is that kind of weird, we hate, we collectively as men hate the power women have, and then also that we want that. It's this weird, I don't know, it's a very weird, I don't know how to say, Oedipus Rex complex, except it's not the mother, it's just with the vagina. I don't know. But
most men don't really see a woman with power except for their mother or a few teachers. So they're not used to it. And because it's not the social norm for women to have power, and the fleeting power of sexuality, which we lose, you guys, tables turn in the end, so men shouldn't be so mad because it ends for us. And then we become nice old ladies that people want to take care of, and that's fine. I look forward to those. I'm really looking forward to those years soon. But
fair enough.
The duality of it's very odd these days, because men get mad also at equal women who have money. They're mad at them too. So which way do you want it, men? Because if we're not allowed to have money, we're gonna go find it by probably being sex workers, as we always have in history. So we pick one. I guess they just want us to marry one man and be servile to one. I don't know what the problem is. Maybe that it's multiple men, that's what they hate. I'm not sure.
Men, if I had to wager, and this is obviously a rash generalization, but I think men want everything. They want as many women as they want. They want who they want when they want it. They don't want to be told no. I think it's all of that. And anytime you're hey, there's some boundaries here, it's no, it's really, we're all 3-year-olds. My opinion is every adult is just a 3-year-old with better vocabulary.
You're not kidding. Us too. We want a man who worked hard but is available, but has money but no other women want him, and is good looking but never even looked at another woman. I mean, the things we want are totally irrational as well. So
yeah. I'm curious. You mentioned you tried dating and that just didn't work out. I'm curious. What was dating for you like the regular schmegular dating you talked about?
Well, it's been a while since I did. I had the opportunity last year to turn a client relationship that needed to end for lots of other reasons. We tried to give it a go dating and it didn't work out. And I miss him, but it's better that way for his children, for his social status. He's better without me, and he has love now with somebody who fits better into his world. And I'm a little envious, but I'm also very happy for him. So that was last year, and right now in the mental state I'm in, I'm not looking to date anybody in the regular world yet. I want love. I'm a human. But before the last year thing, it was a few years before, and it was my neighbor. Oops, it happens in apartment buildings. He was a baseball player who had retired from playing baseball and gone into management for a baseball team. He was a scout, super cute. I told him from day one what I do, so I never lied. He thought he could handle it, but over the months and years, as you know, the love gets deeper, it wasn't wild and cool and sexy to him anymore. He started to worry about my safety, and he started to envy the super rich guys. He said once, we make New Year's plans, and then some dude with a yacht calls you, and then you go because you want the income. He said I was addicted to money. I hope that's not true. I don't think I am. I'm not rich, and if I was addicted to money, I obviously would have become a madam, and I won't. I can't send other people out to do the work I've done knowing what it can be. Sometimes I couldn't sleep at night doing that, no matter how much I paid. And good for the people who can, but I couldn't, because I've seen inside. I know how the sauce is made. So he, because I had to take business when it was offered me, it eventually ruined our relationship. And he moved away from, we lived in California at that time, and he moved away, and it was painful. And I sort of wish I hadn't done that to him. I was trying to have it all, right? I was trying to have my job and the hot boyfriend, and some sex workers can. I know many who are married and in relationships that are great, and I wasn't able to achieve that. I retired to try to be with him normally, but I think there was too much damage done by that point, and we didn't make it. So, oh well.
I mean, just as an outside listener, trying to imagine myself in this person's position like that, I imagine that would be so difficult to be like, hey, babe, let's go get, sushi on New Year's and have a good time. And then be like, I can't. I'm going on a super yacht in Turks and Caicos. You know what I mean? You
tell them I don't love the super yacht guy, and I'm one of many, and he's maybe a controlling, overweight old dude or whatever, or not. But still, I think the partners of sex workers try to participate in their safety, which is real fun that this country criminalizes that and calls them pimps because they might survive partially off the proceeds. It's nonsense, of course. They're trying to help keep their partner safe in this work, but I'm sure it's very difficult for partners. He was not involved at all in my screening or my business. He wanted nothing to do with it. But it also was scary for his job. He had a regular corporate job, and there's no way he's going to achieve promotions and success if he's outed as having a girlfriend who's a big old whore, right? How's that going to work for him?
So how's your big old whore girlfriend? She good?
I mean, status and social norms matter. And if you're trying to climb up the ladder in a corporate setting, people judge. They shouldn't. We all know this, but they do.
Yeah.
So he never got outed as having a girlfriend who was a sex worker, but it would have been very bad for his career.
Yeah. I think because we're sort of touching around it, but like, let's talk about legislation and like making this thing being sex work less of a dark taboo. Is there anything you would do to make sex work, more legitimate, aside from making it legal? Anything that comes to mind is like, yeah, we should do this, we should do that.
Okay, it's not stigma-free even where it's completely legitimized. There are countries more civilized than ours that have done so, and it's still stigmatized. Kind of like strippers here, that they're operating, or porn. They're operating legally, but people are still mad at them because it's sex and whatever, all the things we talked about. But that said, decriminalization, which is what we want, would be far better than criminalization. But I don't know that America is going to give us rights without demanding responsibility. In my state now, New York, they're experimenting with what they're calling the equity or equality model. I've gotten the word wrong. Equality model. It's the Nordic model where they criminalize clients, they don't criminalize us. Theory behind that is if you don't criminalize us, we are more likely to go to law enforcement about violent people or trafficker pimps who are bad. Because if you criminalize us, we just won't talk to the law enforcement, and then they can't find the really bad, the serial killers and blah blah blah. But they think if they criminalize clients, they will deter people who are customers. Well, it doesn't work in the Nordic countries from where it came, and it won't work here. But this is the latest idea that's got some traction in New York. I don't know if that's the future of this state, but the other, the county in Nevada does the full brothel model, which is also popular in some of the states in Australia. That model, the brothel workers, some of the data shows they have pretty healthy psychological outcomes. Their work is legal, so they can be honest. Many of them still hide because of stigma, of course, but at least they get W-2s or 1099s. All the taxes normal. There's security cameras and they're safer in their work. There's medical checks. All of that does raise the price. So it's very expensive for what you get. And a lot of clients don't like it because they can't push any boundaries. They can't overstay their time. They can't have unsafe sex. Ironically, a lot of clients don't like sex work legitimized because they can't get away with as much abuse.
They can't be as freaky, or, maybe that's not the right word.
Yeah, and a lot of clients don't want to be thought of as work because then you got to acknowledge the girl doesn't really like you, and that's not fun, right? They don't want to think of it as a job, which is a problem. So the brothel model seems to be best for safety, but then a lot of sex workers want the freedom. They don't want to be corralled in a brothel and have to behave and not able to do drugs all day and some of the stuff they do. So it's a real problem. We passed, Trump signed them into law, this SESTA-FOSTA laws, which have essentially gone after internet communication between us and promotion of us. So it's shut down a lot of our sites where we talked about how to stay safe and alive, shut down a lot of marketing sites. That has forced a lot of the lowest end workers back on the streets and back into the hands of pimps, because if they can't screen and do deposits and background check clients, then the only way to stay alive and safe from bad clients is the muscle of a pimp who, drives you to the appointment and stays there. And so that's happening a lot right now, which is bad.
Yeah. Because, the safe pimp is also like potentially an oxymoron for somebody who's listening from the outside. I don't know how many safe pimps there are, but yeah.
No, they, take too much money, and there's a whole, but sex workers aren't just going to roll over and give up safeties. They're going to find ways. And if you don't legitimize it, liken it to weed, you used to have to wait in the parking lot for your dealer and he was 3 hours late. Now it's like a totally normal corporate business. If our business is not legitimized and we can't handle disputes normally, then people are going to handle them with street justice. And that's never good. So that's what SESTA-FOSTA has done. I personally just want harm reduction. You don't even have to like this business to acknowledge that these are young, poor women, and having them end up killed and damaged for life is just not the best way to go about it. So legitimizing it more, decriminalizing it. Some of the DAs in the cities are basically not prosecuting prostitution anymore, which is good. And that doesn't mean you still can't help. A lot of the nonprofits have great, help with exit strategies for people who want out, because there are a lot of sex workers who want out of this, as you'd expect. And you can still do all that without saddling people with a criminal record, which harms their ability to get a job. It actually prevents them from retiring. If you have a sex crime on your record, even a misdemeanor, it's pretty hard to get a good job. And when your bosses find out, you end up sexually harassed. I mean, that's what's happened to me, right? I just think America's a pretty vindictive society. We're driven by a desire to punish a lot in this country.
I totally agree.
That doesn't bode well, because if you just decide that a sex worker is branded with the scarlet letter forever, then you've created a person who's given up on trying to participate in the economy and society in a different way. And you don't want people giving up in life. That's a sad place for anybody to be, right?
Yeah. I want to call this out because there's definitely an irony that rings true for me, is that, we've talked a lot about powerful, wealthy men that you see and the class of sex worker that you exist in, so it's not just you. There's not one sex worker that works with these men. There's quite a few, it sounds like.
Sure.
And presumably these men, at least one of them, is probably a senator or somebody that has, the ears or connections to lawmakers. And here's what I find funny is, like, they, being these wealthy, powerful men, know that people like you exist and know what you do because they are working with you, or their friends, close friends, are bringing you to dinner parties or whatever, hanging out.
Yeah.
And so they've met you and they're like, oh my God, you're like quite a lovely individual. Like I'm actually experiencing somebody. And knowing that, and knowing that they know exactly what it is, and knowing that they're going to get on TV and be like, sex work is the devil's work. I'm curious how you feel about that.
I hate it, of course. When there was one person who voted against FOSTA SESTA, Matt Gaetz. I don't adore how much he loves to troll the other half the country. I think that's useless, and maybe he gets donations when he does that. What do I know? But he's the only one who voted against it. And everybody knows he likes, pretty women that he helps pay rent for, and I don't care. Good, fine with me, but or he used to, whatever. I don't know the guy. But yeah, when they vote in ways that get us killed, and meanwhile they hire us, I know Larry Flint was offering $1 million for anybody who could prove that one of them paid for abortions for their mistresses and all kinds of things. The reason they are hypocrites is because of what they lose if they stand up for us. They will lose their marriages. They will lose their social clout. They will lose the donations and votes from conservative people who hate sex work. So they're simply trying to survive and stepping on those they have to. I don't fault people for doing whatever they have to survive, but I do think they're unnecessarily afraid. None of them have to stand up and say, I love hookers. But they could.
Get it on a t-shirt, guys. Let's get it on a t-shirt.
I mean, I'll buy that. You make it. But I mean, and I don't love all of them, but hey, ladies, I don't have to like you to believe that you should yet be able to get housing. I mean, I got a girlfriend right now who can't find anywhere to rent because she's a stripper. And that's legal work. She has a 6-figure income and a W-2, and you don't have to like stripping to know that she should be able to find housing.
Yeah, that's absurd.
Well, this is, and I worry the pendulum is swinging toward more conservatism. Won't be my problem. I'll be dead in a few decades, but I think they could stand up and say that hookers, or whatever you want to call, I don't care what you call us, mistresses, sugar babies, whatever, sex workers, you could say that we're human beings that deserve to survive even if you hate our work. And in fact, sometimes when you decriminalize something and you take the transgressive thrill out of it, you end up with less of it, which might be everybody's goal. So the Netherlands, all drugs are legal, and yet most people don't do them because they got to get up in the morning and go to work and feed their kids. And so sometimes criminalizing something is crime-genic, it creates more, and it doesn't get rid of it.
I mean, we can cite many things. We're on drugs, etc. Totally agree.
Great example. And I don't know, there's politics. My sister's in politics, and that world is so dodgy and so full of lies and perfect behavior that is artifice. The pearl necklaces and the navy suits. And I would love to see that world change and be more honest. And I think they could. I think they're just afraid. Afraid.
Well, you know what comes to mind as you're talking about all of these hypocrites, which I can't stand. I think if you're a politician, I mean, this is, again, rash generalization, but I think there's something fucking wrong with you. But I say that to... Here's my thing. Knowing that a lot, and like probably a surprising percentage of these people that are in politics are with sex workers or use their services. There's a great Greek story where they're about to have a war between two Greek states. And all the women are like, we don't want our men to fucking die. So they stop having sex. And that they're basically on a strike. And they're like, you can't, if you're going to have a war, we're never going to fuck you again. And it prevents the war. Yeah. There's also a movie the movie is set in Chicago, I think. Same concept. Two rival gangs. All the women are like, we're not fucking you guys. And my bringing that up is to say, like, maybe if all of these sex workers go on strike and are like, I'm not going to fuck you again. I'm not going to go out with you again until you make my job fucking legal, then I think there could potentially, like, Matt Gaetz would come out and be like, you know what? I was wrong. I actually think sex work is beautiful and wonderful. And
I mean, that is a great... There would be scabs. It would be impossible because we're not a monolith. Sure. And those people would make a lot of money because they could charge what they want, but it would be so great. I know there's is it bonobos? There's some monkey, and they're little monkey tribes in the jungle who are having a lot of wars, and all the males are killing each other. And when they all finally killed each other off, and there were no more males, the young baby boy monkeys had nobody to learn violence from. and the subsequent generations have been nonviolent.
I feel like that's definitely true. I don't know if it's bonobos or not, but I'll take that as a fact. I'll live with my life that being a totally true fact. I want to talk about this real quick, just because we're hitting the end here. I want a couple of things. You've mentioned retirement a few times, and you've mentioned getting out of the work, and I'm curious because you've also talked about young women, and this job feels very much like there is an age limit, and I'm curious how you think about that.
Yeah, there's a few who captivating Corey. She was in her mid-60s. She just passed away, but she was very booked and busy. But I think most people retire around my age. I don't work as much, mostly by choice. I get emails all day, every day, but I don't have to, and I don't want to. So I would say semi-retired. I have clients I've seen for over a decade, and I like them. And who doesn't like a little extra income? So I still do that, but I'm sort of semi-retired. The reason I can speak out is that I was outed, so there's nothing for me to lose, and I would like to leave this business better if I can contribute in any tiny way. Most people retire at an age where they want children and they want other things. Most people are not sort of lifers like me, and they often then don't talk about what they used to do because they can't. And that's fine. Some do. And so there's a sort of influx of retiring people around 30, early 30s because they want to get married, have babies, do other things. And then there's a lot who retire at menopause because there's sort of changes in the body. Some of them become dominatrixes or do other things. So yeah, it's typically, most of it is a young woman's game, but there's a handful of old ones out there. So who knows?
It sounds like there's definitely in terms of retirement plan or in terms of the transition, it's one of those things that's
it feels like you understand the natural progression. I imagine you and probably a professional athlete kind of have the same point of view. Yeah, at some point this is where my career ends and that's sad, but there's other things I can go do. And am I interpreting correctly?
And there is a vibrant dating scene among older people, but typically when you're a woman of a certain age, you're not broke. So why would you date for somebody who provides for you when you no longer need that? And I think the trope of men providing for women is they typically want to provide for somebody who is more grateful, and the gratitude is usually because they're not rich, right? There are the older ones, some of them are real experts in technical stuff like BDSM, or there's things like Nuru, bondage, and some of the older escorts are very skilled, and you're in sort of capable hands. Their clients are probably looking for something different than sort of a gorgeous little sugar baby to look at. They're simply seeking a different kind of a service. That does exist out there.
Fair enough. I've really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. One thing that came up that has me curious is you talked about your friends that you've made over this work, and that it sounds like, so you have clients that have become friends, and do you still charge them? Is there still that sort of agreement, but you guys are friends? How does that relationship typically work?
When they want to go on vacations together or see me, yes, they still pay because I have bills and I have to survive, and that's what I've monetized, and they know that. Most of them are happy to do that. They like to see you have a nice apartment and go to spa treatments and things, so they don't mind it at all. There are some that I no longer see for a variety of reasons. They're in love with somebody else, or they've aged out physically, and we're still very friendly. I've gone to coffee or tea with some. I hope to. Any of them who want to be friends, I'm happy to. I'm a human. But the ones that I still, go on trips and things with, yeah, they still pay. I certainly like them. I wouldn't keep seeing them for years if I didn't like them.
It's interesting to me because, again, as an outsider, my point of view is that exchange of fiat would make the relationship colored in some way, but it sounds like that's just not true. It sounds like no, this is just what it is.
Yeah, I get that if you're paying somebody, you never know for sure, does she like me? Or is she only here because she needs money? Well, you could say that about men. Are they only here because they want sex, or do they actually like me? I could be upset about that, and I could think that no man actually gives a shit about me. They just want sex if they're dating me. I choose not to feel that way about men. I choose not to hate their sex drive. I think it's natural, and I think it's healthy, and I think sex is fun. And so I'm not going to sit there and say that men don't care about me as a human. They just want to get their dicks wet. And I hope that the men who've provided for me do know that I do have to pay rent and buy food because I'm alive. And that doesn't mean I don't like them. Just because they provide for me and I'm grateful for the support because I need money, like everyone, does not mean that I don't like them. I just live and I have to pay bills like all of us. Yeah, same way I feel about their sex drive. If I found out a guy was like, yeah, I fucking hate you, I just like fucking you, that would suck. But nobody's ever said that to me. Maybe they're lying. Maybe they do. I hope not.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I know there are men in the world that certainly probably could do that, but it's, men are a lot more softies when it comes to that than they're willing to admit. You know what I mean?
I agree. I'm thrilled that they like women as much as they do, and I think it's really neat that they're fascinated by us and we're fascinated by men. God has a real sick sense of humor, doesn't he?
I would agree. If there is a God, he definitely has, or she has, or whoever has the best fucking sense of humor ever. Okay, I want to ask this, and then we can wrap up. I'm curious if a girl or woman is thinking about doing what you have done. What advice would you give them?
Don't.
Didn't expect that at all.
No, it's too hard. It's even if you survive like so far I have, it's too hard. Society makes it so hard. Bad clients make it so hard. Colleagues that are psychotic make it hard. Go get digital skills and do something else. It's too hard. It's just not worth it. But if you're hell bent on this, and for some reason, and then all the stuff's gonna happen to you that hopefully doesn't get you stuck in it, I would want you as safe and alive as possible, and anything I could do to help you stay alive, I would do. We have underground safety networks. Ask around, get invited to them. Once people trust you, learn how to stay safe. We've always had these methods, and we always will, no matter what they do to us. And then I would just, I'm not sure there's a God either, but I'd. And then I would tell her to try to stand proud and love herself as much as she can, because she's going to get told every single day that she should just die. And don't believe that, because you still have worth and you still have value, no matter what it is you choose to do to pay your bills.
Well, Amy, this is great. I really, really appreciate you reaching out to me, and I really appreciate you giving me an hour of your time to chat and be very candid and honest. This was great. Do you have any things you want to plug, or anything resources that come to mind that you'd like me to share, or whatever?
Yeah, there's SWOP, Sex Workers Outreach Project. There's chapters in every city all over the place. If anybody's looking for advice, those are great people to go to. I'm on the socials. Most of them are Amy Taylor NYC. If you want to see my nonsense rantings, and then I'm gonna come listen. I'm gonna come watch your comedy in LA.
Would love that. Great. Thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much for humanizing one of us. Appreciate it.